take heart. I have overcome the world. And that's better news, believe it or not, than the Saints winning the Super Bowl. And it lasts a lot longer. So, the principles that I really want to talk about today, which are here somewhere, are biblical principles that can help you survive difficulty and conflict. Not only survive, to thrive in the face of both. And we're going to start by the first principle, which is demonstrate God's love with action. Love is more than words. Love's way more than a feeling. Love is action. Let's look at Romans 5:8 to see exactly how God writes through Paul here. There we go. Nope. Romans 5:8 says, "But God demonstrates His own love in this: while we were still sinners, He died for us." God Himself proves that love is an action. Aren't you glad He didn't text it or tweet it or write it on Facebook or update His status? But He came here in the flesh. And He suffered here. And He died here as an action to prove His love. And not only that, but He calls us as Christ followers to love each other in the same way. Really, if you want your family to live in a place that's full of hope, then you have to demonstrate His love with an action. In John 13:34 it says, "A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another." And He said, "By this all men may know that you are my disciples." We talk a lot about that in the elder board and leadership. He will know us by His love. They will know us by His love. I want to tell you, one of the hardest places to act out your faith is in the family. Because the people that you love the most can hurt you the deepest, and vice versa. And our tendency, I think, is to protect or to cover up or to not put it out there because we don't want to be rejected. But Christ says exactly the opposite of that. You see, remember to breathe. But Christ was rejected by men. The very figure of Christ hanging on the cross is mocked today. What we're doing in here right now is mocked by people. You know, Lance, Mark was talking that Lance and a team from our church is going up to shoulder with the Voice of Martyr and make a difference in people's lives. And not only the people that they minister to and that are touched, but lives after them that we have no clue. And they have no clue. There are 100 million Christians that are being persecuted right now. Not back in the 1st century or the 3rd century. Right now, 100 million. And Lance and that team are demonstrating God's love through an action. And lives will be changed. God uses them. Ephesians 5:21 says, "Submit to one another the reverence of Christ." The second solid biblical principle that really I've come to in my life, and I want to encourage you do the same, and that is to demonstrate God's love with words. And say, I love you. Not to me, but to each other. You say it to each other. But say it to each other. You know, I really believe that we're living in a generation that is desperate for love. You know, we live in a world of entertainment. We live in a world where communication is so easy. You can communicate a million different ways. We live in a society that is desperate for the human touch. You know, again, you know, why the baptism was so special. You can't tweet it. You can't text it. But I know if I would have texted something, I would have texted, I'm standing here in my church, and I'm watching Barbara and Bobby and Caroline be baptized. And I'm overcome. And I was. Randy and I stood right back there crying like babies. Sorry. You see, what undid me there, I was holding it together pretty good until one of you got up and took a picture. And I thought in that moment, what a perfect picture of God's love being demonstrated, God's love being acted out. I guess I'm still overcome. Words are so important. I remember I'd take my kids, my two oldest kids, Katie and Sean, I would take them to school every morning on the way to work. And every day, I would say, I love you, to both of them. And I remember when we first went, I love you too, Dad. They would hug and kiss, and I'd have them shove them out of the car. You know, and then it wasn't very long after that, it was like, me too. Me too. And they went out of the car. And then a little while later, it was like, okay, whatever. And then one day, I said, I love you, and the door shut. I turned around to Sean, I love you, and the door shut. So I held up carpool line, which moms don't like, by the way, at all. There's no grace in the carpool line that day. But I pulled up a little bit as they mingled with their friends under the little covered walkway, and I kind of got even with them, and I rolled both windows down. And I yelled, I love you! I love you! She says, they both spun around, eyes about this big. The funny part was all the other kids did too. They were making sure it wasn't their dad. But God's wonderful, because right then, in that moment, He miraculously changed their hearts. Because every day after that, until they could drive, they would start telling me how much they loved me way before we got to the drop-off. Right there. They were scared I'd do that again. That's not on. Let's see where we are. You see, without love, there is no life. Without love, there's no life. The third biblical principle that I want to talk about is the one that I probably struggle with the most. And that is to demonstrate God's love by trusting in Him. It rolls off the tongue pretty easily. But really trust me. I learned this week, today, right now, you have to trust Him. Because you can't do it. You can breathe, but you can't do it. You know, if your hope is built on things that can be taken away, then you truly set your family up and yourselves for disappointment and despair.